So you're thinking about running, but not sure how to take the first step. My name is Brian Patterson, and I'm here to help. Welcome to Brian's RunPod. Well, hey there, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Brian's RunPod, where we dive deep into the world of running with some of the best minds and athletes out there. I'm your host, Brian Patterson, and today we've got an awesome guest on the show, Denny Krahe. Now, if you've been around the running community online, you may have come across his work. Denny is the creator of Dizruns.com and the voice behind Dizruns Radio, a podcast that's all about running and the people who love it. His journey started back in 2012 when he got serious about his own running and decided to share his experiences with the world. Spoiler alert, the world wasn't all that interested in the split times. But Denny didn't let that slow him down. After trying his hand at blogging, he found his groove with podcasting, and the rest is history. Today, we're going to dive deep into how Denny turned his passion for running into a thriving podcast and some of his best advice for runners and what keeps him motivated to keep logging those miles. So stick around, and it's going to be a fun one. And welcome, Denny.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Hey, Brian, thank you for having me and quite the good job on the introduction.
Thank you. It's all right. So good. Anyway, I just wanted to start like I start with a lot of my guests. Is what was your experience, relationship with exercise at school, at high school?
In high school, I mostly played ice hockey. Grew up in the northern part of the United States, where hockey was a fairly popular thing. Mm-hmm. So ice hockey was my sport through the winter months. I dabbled in playing golf in the like spring and summer, but I was not anything remotely good at golf. I was on a good day a bogey golfer, which I guess was all right for most novices, but to play competitively, even at the high school level, you needed to be 6 or 8 strokes per 9 better. So 10 or 12 strokes per 18 better. I just wasn't there, but I enjoyed knocking the ball around the golf course a little bit. But yeah, ice hockey was my thing, and running was definitely not.
Yeah, I mean, I've played golf only with my dad, sort of on a casual basis, and I've begun to realize that golf is 90% mind and 10% technique. Technique.
Absolutely. Although if that 10% of technique is off, then the 90% of the mind is probably shot too. So they're very closely related. Yeah, very, very, very frustrating game. So when you went to, I'm assuming you went on to college, did you kind of transition, catch the running bug there, or was it just something you just sort of focused on your studies and being within the college environment? I ran a little bit in college, but I definitely wouldn't say that I caught the running bug there. It was more of a, I don't know exactly what it's like over on your side of the pond, but here in the States, I wasn't too crazy of a partier, but there was a few light nights of pizza and beers and things like that. And so, running was just kind of something that I do a little bit for exercise to try to keep the waistline in check, things like that. But I would never say that I would have enjoyed running in college. It was a necessary evil. It was a means to an end to just try to maintain a decent physique. And that was it. The best part of every run in college was the last step, because it was over, and the first step was the worst because it was just beginning. So it was a little bit late. It was in grad school more when I kind of started to catch the bug a little bit.
Okay. So did you go to college to near where you live now, or you?
So I went to college in Florida. Like I said, I grew up in kind of the northern parts of the United States, in northern Michigan, for those that are familiar with the U.S. geography. So fairly a good distance away. Got away from the winter. That was a big thing. As much as I liked playing ice hockey growing up, I didn't care for the shoveling the snow and the ice and the cold and all that kind of stuff. So went to college in Florida. Like I said, didn't much love the running, but my studies, I was studying athletic training, so kind of sports physio, sports medicine.
Oh, right.
I was around athletes a lot. I enjoyed sport, still enjoy sport.
Yeah.
Just about any variety. You throw a ball on the field or whatever, and I'll watch people do it. I'll try to do it myself. And so yeah, I headed far south, and ended up living in Florida for the better part of 20 years. But we've moved just a little farther north now, but still still in the southeastern part of the United States.
Okay. So I suppose the next question is when did that kind of transition, when was that transition that you basically, this is something I might enjoy, or something I might, even make a career out of, or something I might write about?
Right. When I was in grad school, so a few years after college, I went to Middle Tennessee State University, and as I was the athletic trainer with the track and cross country team. So I was sitting out at the track every day, watching practice, stretching athletes and taping them up as needed, just kind of trying to take care of the medical sides of whatever the college athletes needed. And ultimately, long story somewhat short, I kind of started to run just because I was surrounded by runners pretty much all day, every day.
Yeah.
And then when we'd be sitting at the track at the end of practice, they'd be stretching or they'd be, doing whatever. And I couldn't leave until all the athletes were pretty much done with their workouts and their stretching and make sure they didn't need anything. And there were enough days of just sitting there. I mean, kind of literally twiddling my thumbs, just wishing this was over with, just bored. Like I've been here all day, been here, waiting for practice to be over. And probably in an effort to try to stay awake a couple of times, I just would go out and run a couple laps around the track. Nothing fancy, but just moving, just trying to get some movement in. And, like I said earlier, when I was in undergrad, kind of every run, like the first step was always the worst. Like I really didn't like it. And I don't know that I liked it when I was running around the track in Tennessee, but like I didn't hate it. And so it's kind of like, all right, this is something that, get some movement in, of course. It helps to wake me up at the end of a long day. And I actually kind of like it. And so it's just probably just the exposure of being around. I mean, college track athletes are a higher level than I ever was in terms of their running capabilities and talents and whatnot. But just being around it every day, kind of like, like maybe there's something to this. And then I didn't hate it. So it started, that was at least where the seed got planted, and it took a few years before I really enjoyed it, but at least I more than tolerated. I liked it enough that I kept going at it even when I wasn't just bored. Even if I wasn't fully on board with the sport of running yet.
I mean, something that's just popped into my head is how the culture of athletics in the US in terms of the college system, like you have the American football and whatever, is very much taken seriously compared to, let's say, other countries. Did you ever feel there was that pressure and expectation on you because you had taken a degree, or in that particular field?
I mean, certainly not from the athletic side of things, but I mean, I had a role with the team. I mean, I was their kind of first line of medical, whatever you want to call it, the injury prevention and treatments and recoveries and things like that. And we definitely had some really, really top caliber athletes on our team. A couple of field athletes that were competing at the national level in the U.S. A couple of them even that represented their countries. They're not from the United States, but that different African countries and Canada. I think we had a couple of Canadian athletes. So maybe not at the Olympic level necessarily, but at like World Juniors, things like that. So we had some really top quality athletes. I don't know that I felt the pressure to make sure that they were healthy, but that was the expectation, right? That was the job, was to make sure that their niggles were taken care of and that they were healthy to compete on the weekend and they were healthy to be able to train, during the week. And so it was, I guess I don't know that I consciously thought of it, but I certainly, would consider that obviously I wasn't as much a part of the team as the athletes were from the competitive sense, but I was part of the team. I mean, I was in the mix, every day.
So because you had spare time on your hands and then you just started to take up running, and then from there you kind of got the bug, and did you think, maybe I could do for 5Ks or 10Ks or even aim for a marathon? Is that how it worked?
Yeah, pretty much. I was there for 2 years in Tennessee with the track team, and by the time I had finished up with them, I was probably running, I don't remember exactly what I was running, but like 5 or 6 miles, probably, I don't know, 4 times a week, something like that, 3-4 times a week. So it wasn't always super consistent, but I'd try to run on my lunch break, and depending on how the track schedule went with meets and things like that, maybe I could sneak away for an hour at a track meet when we didn't have any of our athletes were competing and nobody needed anything. I could go for a little bit of a run. But then after I finished up, a couple months later, I was done with school. We had moved back to Florida, and I decided to look for a half marathon because I kind of felt like that, like, not that I had raced much. I think I maybe done maybe couple of 5Ks, maybe a 10K before that, but I can't even remember if I've done a 10K before that. But it's like, yeah, I could see if I could find a half marathon. And I honestly didn't really realize what I was getting myself into, but I just figured, yeah, that sounds like 13.1 miles sounds like a doable distance. I think I could handle that. And we were living relatively close to Walt Disney World, and my wife and I were Disney fans, still are Disney fans a little bit. And so I looked up the Disney Marathon, or I was looking for the Disney Half Marathon.
Yeah.
And at the time, the half marathon was sold out, but the marathon still had openings, and it was, I don't know, maybe 5 months away, something like that. So I just said, well, I'll probably just wait till next year to sign up to the half marathon, and it'll probably be sold out again by the time I get around to signing up for it. So I might as well just sign up for the marathon, which was not how I would recommend people doing it. I didn't know what I was getting into for a half marathon. I certainly didn't know what I was getting into for a full marathon, but I signed up, and that was for January of 2010 was the first marathon. And it was, I don't know how much you want to get into the story. It was a disaster. It did not go well, and I swore I'd never do it again. Kind of all those rookie, made all the rookie mistakes. I'll never do this again. This is stupid. Why did I do this? And then of course, next year I did it again, and didn't go well then.
So what were the first time? What were the key things that you learnt, or what were the key mistakes you made?
I just didn't train well. I mean, I wasn't, for being around the track athletes, you'd think I would have learned more, but I was mostly around, like, honestly, the way that our workouts worked out there. I was mostly around either the sprinters or the field athletes on the regular basis. The distance team, the cross country team would go off campus a lot of times. They'd go to the trails, they'd go other places to run. So I kind of didn't see their workouts very often. Not that gives me, I don't know if that was an excuse or not, but I just didn't know how to train for a longer distance type of event, I guess. And so I was literally doing one run a week. I was doing a long run every weekend, and I would try to get a little bit longer every weekend. And the way I tell the story, I think it's accurate. I don't know. I'd have to go back to my Garmin, deep in my Garmin archives to find out. But I believe that the weekend before the marathon, I did a 14-mile long run. And that was my longest run ever. Was 14 miles the week before the marathon. And I mean, I thought that I've done more than half now. Like, I can do this. Like, this,
oh no!
Like if I've done 14, I can do 26. Because apparently that's how math works. Is that you do 14, then 12 is less than that, so it'll be easy peasy. And so, looking back, I see all the mistakes, because in that build up process, every week I would try to do like 1 mile farther. And I would always get to what I had done the week previous feeling good. And then that last mile, I was really struggling. So when I did 10 miles, I got to 9, I felt really good, but the 9th to the 10th was a struggle. And the next week, of course, I got to 10 feeling pretty good, and 10th to 11th was a struggle. So I don't know how I convinced myself that if I got to 14, that to get to 26 wouldn't be too bad. But spoiler alert, it was really difficult. I think I ended up walking most of the last 9 or 10 miles.
Well, there you go. You said you ran for 14, and that was it.
Yeah, I made it through 14 or 15, and maybe the race day, like excitement and adrenaline got me through 16. But yeah, somewhere in 16 and a half, it was just like the wheels came off of the train went off the rails, and we just death marched and tried to run a little bit, but mostly just walked it in. And like I said, I told myself how dumb this was, and how this was the most foolish thing I've ever done, and I'll never do this again. And I was telling myself for 10 miles of walking that this was it, that I was done. Thankfully, I wasn't. But yeah, that was probably the biggest mistake, because I was so naive, or so I just didn't know. You don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
And I just didn't know how to train. I didn't.
Did you do any, the run during the week? Did you do anything technical or anything like that?
Nope, not really. I mean, maybe I would mix in a mile here or a mile there, very sporadically. It wasn't a routine. I was just, again, I was, and I don't know. I mean, maybe in my defense, in 2009, 2000, I guess it would have been the fall of 2009 that I was training.
Yeah.
Obviously, social media wasn't what it is now, and blogs and there was information was out there, but you really had to go looking for it, as opposed to you just kind of stumbling upon it a little bit easier. I wasn't involved in any type of running community. There were runners in town, but I didn't really know them. I wasn't connected to them. So maybe there's a little bit of excuse there, but I just didn't know. And so I just thought what I was doing would work. And I found out the hard way on race day with, 8, 9, 10 miles to go that I did not train well for this thing.
Yeah.
Now I've got to yeah, I could quit, or I could get to, but see, I convinced myself so much that I would never do this again, that I was like, well, if I'm never going to do this again, I have to finish this one. Like,
yeah,
I'd really kick
yeah.
myself if I just quit at mile 18. Like, so I just get through it, be done with it, and never do it again, which is probably the only reason that I made it through that 26.2 that day.
I mean, we'll come to your kind of coaching methods later, but do you think when you train or coach your athletes now, do you give them kind of an element that they make their own mistakes, like the mistakes that you made?
I mean, we certainly try not to,
Yeah.
try to avoid some of those mistakes. But I do think that maybe not across the board, but in a certain, to a certain extent, I don't want to say failure necessarily, but you learn. A lot of people learn best by overcoming, by experience.
Yeah.
And so, sometimes there is an element of, I'm trying to make sure that they're doing things maybe a better way than I did, but sometimes, folks really do, whatever, like, because one thing I'd sometimes do, and maybe is a negative, or at least can be a negative of my coaching styles. I'm pretty relaxed about most things. So if you miss a run here, you miss a run there, like, hey, that happens to everybody.
Yeah.
But I sometimes that can go too far, where, a missed run turns into a missed week, turns into a missed 2 weeks, turns into, I haven't run much in the last month. And then it's harder to get back on track. And so, and there are probably some folks that I've coached over the years that maybe a little bit firmer guidance would have been helpful to try to get them back on track earlier. But I guess that's just kind of my style, is more of like, hey, come on, let's go. And I'll try to help you. But ultimately, I mean, I'm working with adults, and you've got to bring a little bit of that motivation. You got to bring a little bit to the table too. I can't do it all for you.
Yeah, exactly. That's right. So I was just listening to a podcast the other day. I don't know what your take on this is. Well, it was the Run as Well podcast. It was the UK version, as it were. And there has been this kind of resurgence in running, kind of like a boom. Have you experienced that recently?
Yeah, a bit. Yeah, it's. I feel sometimes like it's hard for me to tell, because I guess I'm deep enough in the running bubble now that, even if the bubble gets bigger, like, do I notice when you're in the middle of a bubble, do you notice how much bigger it's getting? But certainly, I mean, there's at least from my vantage point, there's more and more races here in the United States are selling out quicker. Some of the lottery races that we have, the New Yorks and the Chicago, some of the world majors that have a lottery that, 5-6 years ago, it was, I don't want to say you never heard of anybody not getting picked in the Chicago Marathon lottery, but like, it felt like almost everybody you knew that signed up for the lottery got in. And the last couple of years, it's like there's more and more people. Like, I don't know if it's half. I don't know what the percentage is, but there's a lot more people that don't get into that marathon than what used to. And so, like, clearly more people are signing up because they're not going. We're not taking half the field anymore. Like, we're taking as many runners as we can take. But if more people are getting, are not getting through the lottery, that means more people are signing up for it. And then, of course, there's a trickle down effect from that. So if you were, I think I want to run Chicago, and that's in October, and you don't get into it, well, then you're looking at for some of the, smaller, quote unquote, smaller races. And then those start to sell out, that are kind of October, November races. And I know, or at least I feel like I know, London's getting harder and harder to get into. Again, with
I mean, I did apply for that.
I know here that are trying to do the 6 stars, and it's like, again, I mean, not that it was ever an easy lottery to get into, but it's just like, feels like almost no one from the United States is getting in anymore, or having a lot harder time. So I don't know. I mean, I guess it feels like there's more runners, but as a runner, I mean, not even from the coach side of things, but just as a runner, like, I think that's a good thing. There's room,
because they were saying that. I'll probably give a link to the podcast, but anyway, they were saying that it kind of all started at New York in the mid-70s, and then it kind of blew up. And then they also mentioned a guy called Jim Fixx, who wrote a running book for ordinary people. It wasn't technical. And then they also said that they said the other boom was when Oprah did a marathon. I wasn't aware of that. I didn't know that, but apparently that got. And the fact that women could run first marathon in the Olympics was 84, which was won by an American. So, and that was another resurgence, another boom, as it were. Yeah, it's interesting that there's all these kind of different evolutions of running, over the years. So,
Yeah, it feels like, I guess, maybe, and hindsight makes it easy to look back and kind of see things, but it's like every 10 or 12 years there's something that seems to happen that just kind of makes things more popular, blows, there's some type of boom here, some type of boom there. And like I said, I'm all for it. Even though sometimes it makes, it makes getting into certain races a little more difficult.
Yeah.
I think more runners is a good thing.
So as I said at the intro, 2012, you started to initially blog about running. What was the motivation and impetus to start that up?
I mean, again, it sounds ridiculous, but I think it was kind of one of those, like, I'm gonna write a like, I guess kind of got exposed to blogs or whatever. Like, I'm gonna blog about running, and I'm gonna be rich. I'm gonna turn into the next Runner's World. It's gonna be the one step below Runner's World is gonna be Dizruns, and that's gonna be, I can just talk about running and get all the sponsorships and all the advertisement dollars, and again, just naive and not knowing what the heck I was doing. But that was the year I set my first mileage goal, and kind of got serious about being consistent with my running. Even I was more consistent when I had a race to train for, but even when I didn't have a race, like, I was trying to run 2 or 3 times a week and try to maintain things. And so I guess I was probably trying to keep myself a little bit more accountable with blogging about it as well. But turns out, blogging about your fartlek runs, or your, tempo runs, or whatever, your laps around the track, I don't know. I guess it wasn't interesting. I ran my first lap was in, whatever it was in 90 seconds, and my second lap was 92 seconds. Like, it just, I ran out of things to write about that were interesting about my workouts, after about the second workout. But I had a website, I guess. I had started something that I didn't know where it was going, but I had started something at that point.
Was it not long afterwards that you kind of thought, oh, well, maybe I know, well, podcasting wasn't in its infancy then, but it's not as popular. Yeah, it's 2015, really.
2014.
2014.
Podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would.
Yeah. It's not. I mean, then I mean, compared to now, I mean, it's like every man and his dog is doing a podcast.
Yep.
I know. So you did it early on. So what were those early days like?
Yeah, it was. It is interesting to think about how the landscape, if you will, has changed in the last 10 years. But it kind of transitioned into a self-employed role at that point. I was working as a personal trainer, but I was mostly doing, mostly mornings and evenings was when my appointments were based around clients' work schedules. So I was either, going at 5 or 6 in the morning to workouts, or, 5, 6, 7, 8 o'clock in the evening. And I was working from home throughout the day, and just kind of biding my time, almost like how I got started with running. I was just kind of bored. And I'd heard about podcasting a little bit earlier in the year, maybe late 2013 or early part of 2014. And I dabbled into creating like a general fitness podcast as well. And I was just like, man, I've got all this time in the middle of the day. Like, I've got this running blog that I'm not really doing anything with. I could maybe try to interview runners and put them up on the website, and that'll give me something to do during the day when I don't have a whole lot of other things going on. And yeah, so I just kind of took a flyer and tried it. And I was trying to do both podcasts at the same time, and found out that was a whole lot of work. And so I was really enjoying connecting with the runners and talking about running stories. And so I kind of shut down the other podcast and kept the running thing going with no real plan no real plan. I'm enjoying talking to people, and it gives me something to do a couple days a week. And so I'll just keep going with it. And I don't know, I guess maybe it was after about a year or so, enough people had started asking if I coached or kind of, what could come of it.
Yeah.
That I kind of looked into it and started to do that. But yeah, I mean, it was just, you'd ask a runner to come on to join you as a guest, and they're like, well, what is a podcast? And
I say,
you had to try to explain it. And there weren't very many running podcasts, but it was kind of cool to be, I don't know if I certainly wasn't at the very beginning of it, but kind of in the early days of it, and kind of see some things evolve. And, it's been a lot of fun to connect with so many people over the years.
I think, I mean, and also in terms of, just an aside, I think like you said, the landscape has improved. So in terms of making it more accessible, in terms of, the production values and whatever, it's become, like you said, it's like you can be an equal with someone who is quite professional, who may have like a a team behind them of 10, an editor and a producer and whatever, you can still do it on yourself at a reasonable level. I think that's the thing I love about it, sort of thing. So
yeah, absolutely. It's the playing field is level. You can get in, and if you enjoy it and put in a little bit of work and a little bit of effort, have something that not only is like sounds good, but like, it's also kind of a cool thing. It can be a time capsule of your life, of other people's, the people you're talking to, kind of their stories. I think it's just, I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm Pollyanna to it because I've been doing it for so long and it's kind of a big part of my life now, but yeah, I enjoy it. I enjoy it for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good. So moving on to your coaching, have you kind of touched on it a little bit in terms of your coaching style. I mean, was that, let's say from day one, you said, well, I have a very, relaxed, so-called laid back, maybe coaching style, or is it something you've kind of organically developed throughout the years?
Yeah, I mean, I would say like organic development is part of it. I mean, my personality, I think it'd be safe to say, is pretty laid back. I don't get too worked up about too many things. And so I think that it was just natural for me to kind of head into coaching that way without getting too, bogged down on all the super fine details. Did you run 9-minute pace or did you run 10-minute pace? Well, like it's close enough, whatever. If you're in the right ballpark, did you go 10K or did you go 10, did you go 11K? Well, I mean, we ran for about an hour. Like it's fine. Anywhere in there is okay. So I would say that there's been some evolution in terms of certainly how I work and a little bit more of I don't know whether you want to call it like the bedside manner, if you will, like how I interact with my athletes. And certainly, and maybe even this is maybe something I haven't really thought about, but like interacting differently with different athletes, kind of,
right.
Does this person need a little bit more of a hard nudge, even though I'm still not going to be the yeller and screamer and I'm not going to take it to the extreme.
No.
But like, some people do need a little bit more, firm guidance or telling the hard truths a little bit more bluntly than maybe beating around the bush sometimes. And some people need a little bit more pat on the back and come on, we can get back.
An arm around the shoulder, as it were.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. So I think I've learned I think that part of my coaching has evolved, but I think for better or for worse, and I hope for better, I try not to be quote unquote different as a coach as I am as a real person. I try to bring my real personality in. And like I said, pretty laid back, pretty relaxed about most things. I mean, and again, not that I don't have things that are important and goals and things like that and try to, make sure I'm holding myself to a good high standard as a coach.
Yeah.
But also recognizing that, everybody I work with, like none of them put food on their table based on their running performance. They all have their real jobs, they have their families, they have their kids, they have their other obligations. And so a lot of times they, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but like they beat themselves up bad enough when they miss a run or when something goes sideways that they don't need me to pile on. Running is something they enjoy doing, and I want them to be successful towards their goals. But at the end of the day, like, whether they hit the mark or not, like, do their kids still love them? Do their partners still love them? Are they doing a good job at all the other aspects of life? And if they are, then the running will kind of take care of itself.
And that's a wrap for another exhilarating episode of Brian's RunPod. Thanks for tuning in, folks. As always, we've got you back with all things running, and next week, get ready for some more awesome beginner hints and tips to kickstart your running journey. Don't forget, you can now send me a message. Yep, you heard it right. Brian's RunPod has now become interactive with the audience. If you look at the top of the episode description, tap on send us a text message. You can now tell me what you think of the episode, or alternatively, what you would like covered. If you're lucky, I might even read them out on the podcast. Hey, if you want to keep up with all the latest updates, behind the scenes fun, and even some exclusive content, make sure to follow me on social media. We've also launched a shiny new Facebook page. Just simply search for Brian's RunPod and give us a like. And don't forget to hop over to Instagram, where you can catch all our visual adventures at Brian's RunPod. For those of you who love diving deep into the episodes, head over to our website, www.briansrunpod.co.uk, and there you'll find some detailed show notes and handy chapter markers, making it easy to navigate through your favourite discussions. Please leave a review, as it will help others find this podcast. Music is by Happy Day by Stock Audio. not forgetting artwork by Alice Patterson. And also thank you to my producer, Anna Patterson. So till next week, thanks again for listening.